everyone, this is Sam the History Man. Welcome to another episode of Fletcher Destroyer Ships. Well, if you like World War II destroyers, you've come to the right place. So sit back, put your favorite Glenn Miller record on, and let's explore the history of another Fletcher-class destroyer. Of course, this week it is the USS Chauncey, or I should say the three Chaunceys, because there were actually three ships that were named for Commodore Isaac Chauncey. And of course our main focus is going to be on the Fletcher USS Chauncey, but we'll give a little brief background of the other two as well. But first of all, as I said, the namesake of the ship was Isaac Chauncey, and he was born in Black Rock, Connecticut on the 20th of February in 1779, and he was appointed as a lieutenant in the Navy on September 17th, 1798. He fought with gallantry in the West Indies during the quasi-war with France, but perhaps his most outstanding service was during the War of 1812, when he commanded the naval forces on Lake Ontario, conducting amphibious operations in cooperation with the Army and containing a large British squadron stationed there. His last service was as member and for 4 years president of the Board of Navy Commissioners. Commodore Chauncey died in Washington, D.C. on the 27th of January in 1840. Now, as I said before, there were actually three ships that were named for Commodore Chauncey. And the first one launched on October the 1st of 1901 and would serve in the fleet for 17 years until on November the 19th of 1917, when about 110 miles west of Gibraltar on escort duty, the Chauncey was rammed by a British merchantman, the SS Rose, as both ships steamed in war-imposed darkness. At 03:17, Chauncey sank in about 1,500 fathoms, or 9,000 feet of water, taking to their death 21 men, including her captain, Lieutenant Commander Walter E. Reno, who was the namesake of the Clemson-class destroyer Reno, and Lieutenant J.G. Charles F. Wedderburn, the namesake of the Fletcher-class destroyer Wedderburn. 70 survivors were picked up by the Rose and carried to port. Now, the second Chauncey was the USS Chauncey DD 296. Now, unfortunately, she would become known for having been associated with the Honda Point disaster. She was commissioned on June 25th of 1919 under the command of W.A. Glassford, and she would serve in the fleet until 1923. When on the evening of September the 8th, the Chauncey, in company with a large group of destroyers, were sailing through a heavy fog from San Francisco to San Diego, when a navigational error on board the first ship in her column turned that destroyer and the six that followed toward the rocky California coast rather than on a reach down Santa Barbara Channel. All 7 destroyers, including the Chauncey, went aground on the jagged rocks off Point Pedernales. The USS Chauncey stranded upright high on the rocks near Young DD 312, which had capsized. With none of her men lost, the Chauncey at once went to the aid of her stricken sister, passing a line by which 70 of Young's crew clambered hand over hand to the Chauncey. Swimmers from the Chauncey then rigged a network of lifelines to the coastal cliffs, and both her men and the Young's men reached safety by these means. The abandoned USS Chauncey DD 296 was wrecked by the pounding surf and was decommissioned on October the 26th of 1923. And of course that brings us to the third Chauncey, the Fletcher-class destroyer USS Chauncey DD 667. She was launched by Federal Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company in Kearney, New Jersey on March the 28th of 1943. Her first commander was Commander Earl Van Meter, and he would serve as the ship's captain from May 31st, 1943 until November 8th of 1943. The second commander was Lieutenant Commander Lester Cameron Conwell, and he would be captain from November 8th, 1943 until March the 2nd of 1945, and Lester Conwell would actually win the Silver Star for the ship's actions during the Rabaul campaign. The final commander was Lieutenant Commander Preston Bennett Haynes Jr., who was actually the son of Admiral Preston Bennett Haynes Sr. He would serve as captain of the ship from March the 2nd of 1945 until the end of the war. Now, I'm only going to cover the history of the ship through December of 1944, and the reason for this is that we have already done the series Diary of a Tin Can Sailor, which of course is the diary of sonar man Leslie Irving Forsberg, and we did 5 episodes on that, and that pretty well covers the history of the ship from January of 45 through the end of the war. And so rather than rehash all of that information, we'll just go back and cover what we weren't able to cover during that series, which would be, of course, from the launching of the ship through December of 44. Now, the ship would clear Norfolk on the 28th of August, 1943. She reached Pearl Harbor on the 19th of September. She was assigned to screen a fast carrier task force for a punishing series of airstrikes on Wake Island on the 5th and 6th of October 1943. While screening the carriers, the Chauncey rescued 3 downed aviators from the water, and after a brief return to Pearl Harbor, Chauncey sailed with another carrier task force to Espiritu Santo, arriving on the 6th of November in 1943. The destroyer sailed 3 days later for air raids on Rabaul on the 11th of November in coordination with the Bougainville landings. After the first successful strike launched by the carriers, enemy planes came swarming out to seek vengeance, and a furious 46-minute action during which Chauncey's guns blazed almost continuously resulted in a large number of splashed Japanese aircraft. The Chauncey, continuing to screen the same carrier task force, now sailed north to begin the pre-assault airstrikes on Tarawa on the 18th, 19th, and 20th of November. As the landings began on the 20th, the carriers launched combat air patrol, anti-submarine searches, and close support strikes, which continued until the island was secured after furious fighting ashore. During this operation, Chauncey again helped to drive a Japanese counterattack from the air above the ships she guarded. With the Marshals operation scheduled for the next month, Chauncey's force was assigned to strike at Kwajalein, the center of Japanese air power in the Marshals, and the shipping in its harbor. Airstrikes were launched on the 4th of December 1943 at Kwajalein and Wochi, but Japanese retaliation came in the evening, and Chauncey joined in the fire, which splashed many enemy planes and drove them away just after midnight. Her task force sailed on to replenish and repair at Pearl Harbor. Bound for action once more, Chauncey sailed to Funafuti, where she made a rendezvous with a seaplane tender whom she and another destroyer escorted up to Tarawa. After a brief patrol duty there, she returned to Funafuti to prepare for the next operation, Majuro. Chauncey sailed on the 22nd of January in 1944 to screen escort carriers north to Majuro for the assaults that took place on January 30th. The destroyer screened and patrolled at Majuro and Kwajalein during the assault and occupation of the atolls, and in mid-March returned to the South Pacific. After 10 days early in April on watchful patrol off newly occupied Emerald Island, Chauncey screened escort carriers into position to cover the Atape landings on the 22nd of April and guarded them as they provided close air support. Sailed north to replenish at Manos on April the 28th and returned to their covering strikes off New Guinea until May the 12th. Now Chauncey was assigned to guard the escort carriers, assembling and rehearsing for the Marianas operation, and on June the 8th of 1944 she arrived at Kwajalein for final preparations. She got underway 2 days later to screen carriers supporting the landings on Saipan with pre-assault raids on the 13th and 14th of June and air covering during the assault on the 15th of June. The next day, Chauncey joined the group operating off of Guam for bombardments and airstrikes, and her guns aided in driving off enemy air attacks on the 16th and 17th. Returning to Saipan, she screened carriers there until the 25th, when she got underway to escort transports to Inuitak. She returned to operate with the carriers off of Saipan and Guam from early July, and on July 9th began her part in the continuous bombardment of Guam before the landings there on the 21st of July. Chauncey continued to screen carriers covering operations on Guam through July, aside from an escort voyage to Inuitak with unladen transports, and on the 10th of August left Guam astern-bound for Inuitak in repairs at Pearl Harbor. She returned to Manos to prepare for the massive Philippine operation, and on the 14th of October sailed for Leyte, guarding the Southern Attack Force transports. She offered close-in protection during the landings on October the 20th, and that night patrolled watchfully around the transports, which remained dangerously close to shore in order to speed their unloading. On October the 22nd, 2 days before the opening of the decisive battle for Leyte Gulf, Chauncey cleared to escort unloaded ships to Manos, from which she made 2 voyages to escort ships to Leyte and Palau during November. And of course, following that, the next month, she would return to San Diego in late December, at which time much of the crew would go on a 30-day leave and return home. And they would return to the ship in late January of 1945. And of course, that's when we start with the Diary of a Tin Can Sailor. Now, if you want a more in-depth history of the ship during those times, especially during the Okinawa campaign, please refer you to Diary of a Tin Can Sailor, which is the first 5 episodes that we put out on this channel. And if you have not heard that series, I highly recommend it. If you've made it this far into this video, I'm certain you will enjoy that. That's the Diary of Sonar Man Leslie Irving Forsberg, who kind of helped to start this journey that I'm on and exploring the Fletcher-class destroyer. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to be returning soon with another profile of another Fletcher-class destroyer from World War II. Until then, see you later.